What would you say to local young people considering a career in nuclear?
Go for it. I'd be very jealous of you. Why did I do a humanities degree?
We're Dem and Darryl, we're nuclear professionals, and we're your hosts on Fission Chips. Welcome to Fission Chips, where the chips are hot, the takes are hotter, and the conversation is going nuclear.
Joining us today is the MP for Warrington North, Charlotte Nichols, who is the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Nuclear. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Bit of a mouthful.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell us a bit about your background. How have you got to where you are today?
I spent a long time working in the trade union movement. A friend of mine that suggested I put my name forward, never having had any particular desire to go into politics. Glad I took the plunge.
So how often does nuclear come to conversation with your constituents?
I think representing Warrington North is something that is coming up almost every week. In fact, just before coming here today, I've been at a nuclear conference in Birchwood Park. So it's something that very much features as part of my weekly activity. And when you go out knocking on doors around the community, again, support for nuclear is something that really comes up.
So now you're an advocate for nuclear, but were you always this way? Did you have a different perception before you took this role?
I think I didn't really know a lot about nuclear until I started working at GMB. Like a lot of people, I think I had a very kind of surface level knowledge, not always things that were particularly helpful to the industry, the sort of Simpsons and things like that, my main kind of reference point for nuclear. But it was working at GMB and speaking to members there who worked in the sector about, you know, what nuclear is, how it works, and starting to find it kind of really interesting. And I joke now that, you know, I'll often be on kind of panel discussions and things as an MP where I'm on broadly the same panels, saying broadly the same things, just with a slightly different hat on now. So, you know, I've obviously been doing a lot of work for years with the Nuclear Industry Association, for example, you know, companies like Sellafield that are based here. So it's been really nice to be able to kind of develop those relationships in a new role and advocating in a different way than I was doing before. It feels a bit more like a continuation more than anything.
So what opportunities does nuclear bring to local communities like this one?
I think nuclear is absolutely huge for areas like ours. So we have around 7,000 jobs in civil nuclear in Warrington North. And it's right across the piece, everything from new build through to decommissioning, but also things like kind of nuclear propulsion for space flight, nuclear medicine, you know, all sorts of really cool innovation is happening here. I think what can be difficult sometimes is because we don't have a nuclear power station here or something that's kind of visible on the skyline, that it can be hard sometimes, particularly for young people, to connect that with their experience and what they're looking to do in the future. Because you could drive past a lot of Birchwood Park and from the outside, as far as you know, maybe it's a normal office or it's a call centre or what have you. And actually, you know, you've got some nuclear labs in there doing some really amazing stuff. So it's about the outreach that we do into schools, for example, you know, making sure that young people that are interested in a career in STEM know that those opportunities are here for them, and making sure that when they're making decisions about going off either to university or taking up an apprenticeship, that they know that there's a good career for them. Because I think for young people, knowing that you're maybe taking on, you know, in some cases, perhaps £100,000 of student debt, rightly, if you're going to do that and commit your years of your life and time to doing it, you need to know that that investment that you're making into your future is going to be met on the other side by that investment from the government and from industry in your future.
Has the conversation around nuclear changed in this constituency over the years while you've been involved?
Absolutely. I think we often used to find when we were talking about it that people spoke about nuclear as something that was kind of past tense. You know, a huge proportion of the jobs locally have been in decommissioning for a long time. People think that nuclear jobs are something we used to have here, or that it's jobs in kind of closing down the industry. And the more that we've had jobs in, you know, kind of new build and those sorts of things really kind of taking off locally, that's sort of one of the really big areas of growth. People are able to see that, oh no, actually nuclear is a place where things are happening. We used to find that people would talk a lot about the cost of nuclear, understandably, but with the energy prices being all over the place in recent years, particularly following what's happened with Russia and Ukraine, I think the cost of nuclear has become sort of less of a concern for people. What they want to know is that it's safe. And of course, we have the safest industry in the world here in the UK. But they also want to know that there's a plan for long-term storage of spent fuel at the end of its life, which I think the industry is in a place to be able to do.
So rather than should we, shouldn't we, it's now how do we do this well?
Yes, exactly.
Is nuclear actually creating jobs for the long term in the area?
Absolutely. I mean, in the time that I've been a Member of Parliament, we've seen about 10% year-on-year growth in nuclear jobs in Warrington. And actually, in some ways, I feel bad calling them jobs because they're careers, which is something that we don't necessarily see in a lot of other sectors where there'll be jobs on a project, but there's nowhere really for them to go once that project's done. This is long-term careers that are being built here and that have been really growing in recent years.
So here at Fission Chips, we like to think of ourselves as nuclear myth busters, so we're going to ask you some questions on those.
What's the biggest concern people raise to you about the nuclear industry?
I would say the biggest concern is when people say, but what about the spent fuel? What they want to know is that it's safe. And of course, we have the safest industry in the world here in the UK. But they also want to know that there's a plan for long-term storage of spent fuel at the end of its life, which I think the industry is in a place to be able to do.
Is there a particular myth that you hear repeatedly from your constituents about the nuclear industry?
I think sometimes the one you hear is people saying that, it's not safe. They've watched Chernobyl or, again, seen The Simpsons, which isn't necessarily the best advert for nuclear safety. But actually, when you talk to them about it, I think they start to understand actually how much goes into making sure that it's something that's safe. And they tend to come away from those conversations pretty reassured.
Will it be safe for families that live nearby?
Well, so a lot of the time, there's not that many people who will live close to a particular installation because by definition, they're often built in kind of, coastal communities with access to water, things like that. But I always say to people, when you've been to one of these facilities and you see all of the layers and layers and layers of safety, I would much more readily live next door to a nuclear power station than I would to a recycling plant, for example.
Can you share a real story of how nuclear impacts some of your constituents?
I think the nicest thing to see is when you have people from different generations of the same family that have gone into nuclear. And I always think that's something that is in some ways quite special and unique about the sector. You often find that, I have family members who've done kind of all kinds of jobs. And when people have done, something like mining, for example, they're very proud of the job that they do, but they're often very keen that their children don't go on to do that job. They take the pride in their work and their role, but they want their children to go off and do something else. I think it actually is something really quite positive and special about nuclear, that when people have worked in the sector, they want their kids to have those experiences as well, because they've often been able to work all around the world, have comfortable salary, to have those opportunities for personal growth and development and qualifications that they've gained. And you speak to so many people who came in as kind of, young apprentices, often at 16 or 18, who are now, at managing director level in different organizations in the industry. I think that's the bit that I love seeing. And I love talking to people who say, well, actually, I came to work here because my dad works here and he loved it. And we grew up with the nuclear industry, and that's something that they want for their own kids as well. I think that's lovely.
What would you say to local young people considering a career in nuclear?
To go for it. I think I get to visit and experience so many cool things because of my role as an MP and through the nuclear APPG, like some of the technology I've seen, getting to see fusion reactors, all sorts of different sites around the UK. You get to go in and kind of get under the skin of all of these things. And every time I see it, I'm not only so impressed by it, but I'm also like, why did I do a humanities degree? So I would say if you get the opportunity to, go in to do a bit of work experience, to go and visit something, to maybe think about if this is something you might want to pursue, I'd be very jealous of you.
Got to say, I've been around to some of the sites with my role and they are so impressive. All the scale of them it's impressive as well, and all the engineering that goes into.
I always get really hung up on really small things. So I was at Sizewell B and we were sort of stood on the kind of turbine platform. And I remember just seeing the screws holding it together, and it's vibrating so fast and your feet are kind of, and I was looking at it and I was like, I'm forever having to rehang the door on my washing machine. There's the vibrations kind of knocking it out. And then I was thinking the technical stuff that's gone into, this screw stay that, and then you kind of then zoom out to the entire station around you and just start thinking about all the layers and layers and layers of expertise that's gone into it, and just, getting my head melted by screws size well be, it's so cool.
The little things, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you balance long-term national goals with the short-term local concerns?
I think the key thing is making sure that, when you look at nuclear projects, it's long-term decision-making. Process of decommissioning is, 60 or 70 years. You can't be making those decisions within a kind of 5-year election cycle or an annual budget cycle. You've got to be thinking longer term.
So that sort of shows the importance of the all-party groups like the one you're involved in.
Absolutely, because if we get that consensus right across politics, then it means that, whatever happens at future elections, that actually as parliamentarians, that we're all on board with nuclear as a project, and that we know that whatever happens, that we're all committed and kind of moving together on that journey. And that's huge.
What legacy would you want nuclear to leave in your constituency?
I, in many ways, don't want it to be a legacy in that, how I want nuclear to be here for the long term. But I think something that I'd be really excited about seeing is, some kind of visitor centre or, museum space, for example, where young people can come in, they can learn about the heritage of the sector that we have here, but also about the science, maybe little experiments that they can take part in. And really feel like this is something that isn't just delivering on the national mission, which of course it is, but that it's something that's rooted and placed here as well.
So now we're going to move on to the quickfire round of questions.
Curry sauce or mushy peas?
Oh, mushy peas.
Large-scale or small-scale nuclear?
Both.
Constituency or Westminster?
Oh, constituency, any day of the week.
Heat in or take away?
Take away.
Fission or fusion?
Fission.
Thank you so much for coming in today and answering all our questions.
It's been really interesting.
Thank you for having me. Can I get a chip now?